Title: Whispers from Hollow Pines. Part 1: The Arrival. The heavy clouds pressed low over Hollow Pines, casting a gray pallor across the small town that seemed forgotten by time. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the wind carried a faint whisper, soft, elusive, almost like a warning. Evelyn Harper pulled her coat tighter against the chill as her car rolled down the winding road leading into town. She hadn't planned to come here, not really. But the letter, the one she found tucked away in her grandmother's attic, had changed everything. It was a simple note, written in hurried, shaky handwriting. Come to Hollow Pines. Find the truth before it finds you. Now, with the old address etched into her mind, Evelyn was here, standing at the edge of a town that seemed to breathe secrets. The streets were deserted, save for a few flickering streetlights struggling against the encroaching fog. She parked near the cracked sidewalk and stepped out, the cold biting through her gloves. The houses were old, some boarded up, others bearing peeling paint and sagging porches, silent witnesses to years of stories best left untold. Her grandmother's house was at the end of the lane, a crooked Victorian with dark windows that seemed to watch her approach. Evelyn's heartbeat quickened. The air around the house felt heavier here, the whispering wind now a chorus of voices just beyond hearing. As she crossed the threshold, the wooden floorboards groaned beneath her feet, echoing through the empty rooms. Dust motes swirled in the shafts of fading daylight, settling over faded wallpaper and forgotten furniture. A chill crept up her spine as the door slammed shut behind her. In the living room lay an old trunk, its brass lock tarnished but intact. Evelyn knelt and brushed away decades of dust. Inside, wrapped in brittle parchment, was a small diary, the last piece of her grandmother's puzzle. Opening it, she found entries filled with fear and confusion, mentions of shadows moving in the woods, strange sounds at night, and a name repeated over and over, the Hollow Man. A sudden noise upstairs made her start. Footsteps? Or the house settling? Evelyn strained to listen, but the silence swallowed the sound. Determined, she grabbed a flashlight and headed up the narrow staircase, the beam cutting through the darkness like a lifeline. At the top, a long hallway stretched into blackness, doors slightly ajar, whispering secrets she was only beginning to understand. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the low murmur of voices, calling her deeper into Hollow Pines' dark heart. Whispers from Hollow Pines. Part 2. The Secrets Unfold. Evelyn stood frozen at the top of the staircase, the beam of her flashlight trembling slightly in her grasp. The long hallway ahead stretched into darkness, the faint outline of old doors barely visible in the gloom. The air was colder up here, sharper, as if it carried the weight of memories better left undisturbed. Her heart thudded in her chest, each beat a reminder that she had come too far to turn back now. She moved forward cautiously, the wooden floor creaking beneath her feet. The house seemed to breathe around her, exhaling years of dust and decay. Shadows danced along the walls, cast by the thin circle of light from her flashlight, and for a moment, she thought she saw movement at the edge of her vision. But each time she glanced toward it, there was nothing but the peeling wallpaper and the cold silence. The first door on the left was slightly ajar. Evelyn pushed it open with a slow, deliberate motion. The room beyond was a small study, lined with shelves sagging under the weight of yellowed books and scattered papers. A thick layer of dust covered everything, but the air smelled faintly of something else, old smoke and something sharper, like rust. Her flashlight settled on a desk piled with letters tied together with a faded ribbon. She knelt to pick them up, the papers brittle but intact. The handwriting was hurried and uneven, the ink smudged in places. Her grandmother's name appeared on the envelopes, letters written decades ago, sealed but never sent. As she untied the ribbon and began to read, the words spilled out like fragments of a nightmare. The letters spoke of strange occurrences in Hollow Pines, neighbors disappearing without a trace, whispers heard in the woods after dark, and a growing fear that something was watching from the shadows. One letter, dated just days before her grandmother's death, was particularly chilling. It described a figure called the Hollow Man, a tall, thin presence said to appear at the edge of the forest, draped in darkness, its face always hidden. The writer warned that those who saw him were never the same, their minds unraveling like threads in a tapestry. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she folded the letter. She had always thought her grandmother was eccentric, perhaps a little too fond of ghost stories. But these letters suggested something much darker, something that had seeped into the very bones of the town. A sudden noise echoed from down the hall, soft footsteps, deliberate and slow. Evelyn's breath caught. She shone her flashlight toward the end of the corridor, but the beam cut through only dust motes and shadow. The footsteps stopped. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her nerves. "Hello." Her voice was barely more than a whisper, swallowed by the silence. No answer. Determined to find answers, Evelyn pressed on, moving toward the door at the far end of the hall. This door was closed, unlike the others, its surface scarred and stained with age. The handle was cold and unyielding, but it gave way under her careful twist. Inside was a small bedroom, the remnants of a life abruptly abandoned. The bed was neatly made, dust settling over the faded quilt. On the nightstand lay a single photograph, black and white, edges curling with time. It showed a group of children standing beneath a towering pine tree, their faces blurred as if the camera had caught something else in the frame. Behind them, the forest seemed darker, the shadows stretching unnaturally long. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She recognized one of the children. It was her mother, barely older than 6, standing with a wary expression. The others were unfamiliar, but their eyes seemed to follow her, haunted and pleading. A soft whisper drifted through the cracked window. She turned sharply, flashlight scanning the empty room. The whisper grew louder, words threading through the cold air. "Find us." Evelyn's heart raced. She gripped the photo tighter and hurried from the room, down the stairs, and out the front door. The mist had thickened, swirling around the crooked house like a living thing. She paused at the foot of the steps, looking toward the edge of the forest where the trees stood like silent sentinels. The wind carried the whisper again, urgent and insistent. "Find us." Gathering her courage, Evelyn stepped onto the leaf-strewn path leading into the woods. Each step crunched beneath her boots, the forest closing around her like a dark cathedral. The branches overhead blocked the sky, filtering the weak moonlight into fractured shards of silver. As she walked deeper, the whispers grew louder, echoing through the trees, wrapping around her like a chill. Her flashlight flickered, then steadied, illuminating the narrow trail ahead. Every shadow seemed alive, every rustle a warning. The forest was not empty. She stopped beside an ancient pine, its bark twisted and scarred. Embedded in the trunk was a strange carving, a spiral that matched the symbol she had seen on the pendant in her grandmother's trunk. The spiral seemed to pulse faintly, as if breathing. Evelyn traced the grooves with her fingers, a sudden jolt shooting up her arm. The whispers intensified, swirling into a chorus of voices, some angry, some sorrowful, but all desperate. "They are trapped," one voice breathed. "Bound by the spiral. Bound by the man." "Who are you?" Evelyn whispered, heart pounding. "We are the lost," came the answer, a soft, mournful sigh. "Children taken, hidden between worlds." A sudden movement caught her eye, something darting between the trees. She swung her flashlight, but the beam found nothing. The forest had swallowed it whole. Panic surged through her veins. She wanted to run, to escape the growing darkness, but something deeper held her in place. The spiral, the diary, the voices, they were all connected. And if she turned away now, the children's fate would be sealed. A voice echoed sharply, cutting through the whispers. "Beware the hollow man. He guards the veil." Evelyn's breath caught. The figure from the diary. The shadow in the woods. She pulled her coat tighter and pushed forward, the path growing narrower, the trees pressing closer. The whispers became a desperate chant. "Find the key. Break the chain. Free us." Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet shifted. She stumbled and fell against a moss-covered rock, the spiral on the tree glowing brighter. The air trembled with unseen energy. A cold hand brushed her shoulder, a touch like ice, sharp and fleeting. Evelyn spun around, but the forest held only darkness. Her flashlight flickered and died. The world plunged into black. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the whispers turned into screams. Whispers from Hollow Pines. Part 3. The Hollow Man. Darkness swallowed Evelyn whole as her flashlight died, leaving her stranded in the thick forest with only the echoing screams ringing in her ears. Her breath came fast and shallow, heart hammering against her ribs as the cold night air pressed in on her. The whispers had turned to agonized screams, cutting through the silence like shards of glass. She fumbled in her coat pocket for her phone, hoping for a flicker of light, a sign of connection, but the screen stayed black. No signal. No help. Just the relentless forest, alive and watching. The spiral on the ancient pine still glowed faintly in the distance, a pulsating beacon in the dark. Something about it both terrified and fascinated her. Pushing herself up from the mossy ground, Evelyn swallowed her fear and moved cautiously toward the glowing spiral. Each step felt heavier, as if the forest itself resisted her approach. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the darkness. A tall, thin figure cloaked in black, its face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. The Hollow Man. He stood perfectly still, the very essence of the darkness surrounding him. No eyes, no features, just an empty void beneath the hat, a silhouette that seemed to absorb light. He lifted a pale, skeletal hand and pointed toward the spiral on the tree. His voice a hollow whisper carried on the wind. "Leave this place," he warned, the words like ice on her skin. "Or become like us." Evelyn's legs trembled, but she shook her head. "Who are you? What do you want?" The Hollow Man's form flickered, twisting like smoke caught in a breeze. "I am the keeper of the veil, the watcher between worlds. Those who wander too close become lost." Her grandmother's diary had warned her about this figure, the curse that bound the town and its lost children to the shadows. "Why are the children trapped?" Evelyn demanded, voice steadier now. "What happened to them?" The Hollow Man's hand fell, and the shadows around him seemed to pulse. "They trespassed into a place they should not have seen. The spiral binds them here, between the living and the dead. Their souls caught in the endless night." Evelyn looked toward the glowing spiral. The symbol seemed to throb in time with her racing heartbeat. "How do I free them?" A harsh laugh echoed from the darkness, like wind through dead branches. "You cannot. Not yet. The spiral's key is lost, hidden in the house where you began." Her mind flashed back to the trunk, the pendant, the diary. Everything connected. The Hollow Man's shadow stretched toward her, tendrils of darkness brushing her skin. Time runs thin. The veil weakens. Choose wisely, freedom or oblivion. With a sudden surge of courage, Evelyn stepped back, breaking the invisible tether. The Hollow Man's form dissolved into the night, leaving only the whispering wind. She stumbled back toward the path, the screams fading into sorrowful murmurs. The forest seemed less hostile now, but the weight of the night pressed down on her. As she reached the crooked house, dawn was beginning to bleed into the sky, a pale wash of pink and gray. The spiral pendant around her neck pulsed faintly, warm against her skin. Inside the house, Evelyn felt the eyes of history upon her. The secrets were waiting, and she was ready to uncover them, one painful truth at a time. Whispers from Hollow Pines. Part 4. Echoes in the Walls. The first light of dawn seeped through the grimy windows of the old Victorian house, casting long shadows across the floorboards where dust danced in silent swirls. Evelyn sat on the creaking wooden stairs, her fingers tracing the spiral pendant resting against her chest. The weight of the night's encounter with the Hollow Man lingered like a shadow that refused to fade. She felt no relief in the daylight. If anything, the house's oppressive atmosphere seemed to tighten its grip, as if aware that she was drawing closer to its hidden truths. With renewed determination, Evelyn rose and moved toward the basement door, an iron-bound trapdoor hidden beneath a threadbare rug. Her grandmother's diary had mentioned it in passing, a place she hadn't yet dared to explore. The basement had always been off-limits during her childhood visits, shrouded in mystery and hushed warnings. Now, the eerie pull was undeniable. She found the rusted latch and pulled it open with a groan. A cold rush of stale air greeted her, carrying the faint scent of earth and decay. The narrow staircase spiraled downward into darkness, each step echoing hollowly beneath her boots. At the bottom, Evelyn flicked on a small lantern she had brought from the kitchen. The dim glow revealed stone walls lined with old crates, broken furniture, and cobwebs that glittered in the feeble light. But beyond the clutter, a strange pattern caught her eye. Faint scratches on the stone, arranged in a spiral matching the symbol she had seen carved in the woods and on the pendant. Her pulse quickened as she traced the pattern with trembling fingers. Suddenly, a cold draft swept through the basement, extinguishing the lantern's flame. Plunged into darkness once more, Evelyn's breath came in quick gasps. A whisper rose from the shadows, soft, almost a sigh. "Help us!" She fumbled to relight the lantern, and when the flames sputtered back to life, she glimpsed movement, figures flickering at the edge of her vision. Children's faces appeared in the shadows, pale, hollow-eyed, their mouths open in silent pleas. Evelyn stumbled backward, heart pounding. "Who are you?" she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "We are the lost," a voice replied, sorrow threading the words. "Bound by the spiral, trapped by the hollow man." Her grandmother's warnings echoed in her mind, and she realized the basement was more than a storage space. It was a prison for the souls who had vanished from Hollow Pines. Determined to free them, Evelyn scanned the room, searching for anything that might be the key. Among the rubble, an old music box caught her eye, its surface etched with the spiral symbol. She wound the key, and a haunting melody filled the air, fragile notes that seemed to reach through the darkness. The children's faces became clearer, their forms growing more solid as the music played. But the hollow man's shadow stretched into the basement, a creeping darkness that twisted and recoiled at the sound. "You cannot undo what is done," the voice hissed. "The veil is thin, but the price is steep." Evelyn's hands shook, the music box slipping from her grasp and shattering on the floor. The melody stopped abruptly, and with it, the children's forms vanished, swallowed by the shadows. A chill settled in the air, and the basement door slammed shut above her. Trapped in darkness, Evelyn understood that her quest was far from over, and the Hollow Man was watching, waiting for her next move. Whispers from Hollow Pines. Part 5. The Diary's Secret. Evelyn's heart hammered in the oppressive darkness of the basement, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. The shattered music box lay at her feet, its once delicate melody silenced forever. The weight of the Hollow Man's threat pressed on her like the heavy stones surrounding her. She fumbled along the wall, searching blindly for the stairs. Her fingers brushed against something cold and rough, a metal ring embedded into the stone. Pulling with all her strength, the heavy trapdoor above groaned and slowly lifted, allowing a sliver of weak morning light to filter in. Gasping, Evelyn climbed out and slammed the door behind her. The stale basement air was replaced by the musty scent of the house's aging wood and paper. Back in the dimly lit parlor, she reached for her grandmother's diary, the worn leather cover marked by time and secrets. The spiral symbol was scrawled repeatedly in its margins, a code she was desperate to decipher. Opening the diary carefully, Evelyn's eyes caught a passage she hadn't noticed before, written in shaky handwriting. "The spiral is the key, but only when the song is heard in the right place. The house itself remembers. Seek the room where shadows linger longest." Her pulse quickened. Which room could that be? Evelyn began her search, moving from the cold kitchen to the dusty hallway. She passed doors that led to forgotten bedrooms, their curtains drawn tight and filled with stale air. At the end of the hall, a door slightly ajar beckoned her. She pushed it open to reveal a small study, walls lined with bookshelves sagging under the weight of countless volumes. A single window faced the overgrown garden, casting a pale, flickering light. But it wasn't the light that drew her attention, it was the heavy silence. In this room, shadows clung to the corners like living things. A sudden movement caught her eye, a small music stand near the fireplace, holding a sheet of aged music. The same melody the music box had played. Evelyn picked up the sheet and ran her fingers over the notes, memorizing the haunting tune. She felt a strange connection, as if the song was a language only she could understand. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and a faint whisper echoed through the room. "Play the song," Awaken the spiral. Evelyn's hands trembled, but she noticed an old, dust-covered piano in the corner. She hesitated, unsure if she dared to awaken whatever lay beneath the surface. With a deep breath, she sat at the piano bench and began to play. The notes stumbled at first, but soon the melody filled the room, weaving through the shadows like a thread of light. As the final note lingered in the air, the spiral pendant around her neck pulsed warmly, casting a soft glow. The walls seemed to breathe, the shadows shifting and revealing hidden etchings, the same spiral pattern carved into the wood and plaster. Evelyn realized the house itself was a living key, a gateway between worlds bound by the spiral's curse. And somewhere deep inside, the lost children waited for her to unlock their prison. Whispers from Hollow Pines. Part 6. The Hidden Room. The final note of the piano's haunting melody faded into the stillness, leaving a ringing silence that pressed heavily against Evelyn's ears. The soft glow from the spiral pendant warmed her skin, casting eerie shadows that danced and flickered along the peeling wallpaper. The house seemed to shift around her, like a living entity responding to the song. Her eyes scanned the room, drawn to a section of the bookshelf that seemed different, newer, less dust-covered, and carved with the faint outline of the spiral symbol. Her fingers traced the pattern, and with a slow creak, the shelf swung inward, revealing a narrow passage cloaked in darkness. Evelyn's breath caught. This hidden doorway was a secret her grandmother had kept well guarded in the pages of the diary. Summoning her courage, she stepped into the passage, the air growing colder with every step. The walls narrowed, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed through the corridor. Her flashlight's beam danced nervously over rough stone, revealing ancient carvings of twisted trees and ghostly faces. The passage opened into a small, dimly lit room, unlike any she had seen before. It was circular, lined with rough stone walls covered in moss and strange, pulsating spirals carved deep into the rock. In the center of the room lay a stone altar, cracked and stained with dark, old marks. Resting atop the altar was a small, intricately carved wooden box. Evelyn felt an inexplicable pull toward it, as if it held the answers she sought. Her fingers trembling, she opened the box. Inside was a faded photograph of children, smiling, innocent faces that twisted into expressions of fear when the photo caught the flickering light. Beneath the photo lay a folded letter, brittle with age. Unfolding the letter, Evelyn read the trembling handwriting. To whoever finds this, know that the spiral's curse is a prison born of grief and vengeance. The children trapped here are bound by a promise broken long ago. To free them, the cycle must be broken, and the Hollow Man confronted. But beware, the price is more than sacrifice. It is your soul. The room seemed to pulse with growing energy, the spirals glowing brighter, casting ghostly patterns across the walls. A sudden whisper brushed against Evelyn's ear, cold and desperate. Find the key, before the night consumes all. Her heart pounded. The truth was darker and more dangerous than she had imagined. The Hollow Man was no mere legend. He was the guardian of this curse, and now, he knew she was close. Evelyn turned back toward the passage, the weight of the letter heavy in her pocket. The house was alive with secrets, and she was no longer an outsider, she was part of the story. Outside, the forest murmured with restless voices, and the spiral pendant pulsed urgently against her chest. The next steps would lead her deeper into the shadowed heart of Hollow Pines. Whispers from Hollow Pines. Part 7. Shadows Beneath the Floorboards. Evelyn emerged from the hidden chamber feeling the heavy weight of the letter pressing against her chest. The secret room's damp air still clung to her skin as she made her way back through the narrow passage, the dim light of her flashlight barely piercing the blackness. The house seemed quieter now, but the silence was suffocating, a silence that promised something unseen, lurking just beyond the edges of perception. As she stepped back into the study, the pendant's glow intensified, warming her skin with an almost urgent pulse. Her fingers tightened around it. The message was clear. Time was running out. Evelyn's eyes settled on the worn wooden floorboards near the fireplace. For the first time, she noticed the odd pattern, an uneven line where the wood didn't quite match, like a door concealed in plain sight. Kneeling down, she pressed her hand against the floor. It was loose, just enough to slide open. A gust of cold air rushed up from the darkness below, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of earth and decay. With trembling hands, Evelyn pulled at the floorboard, revealing a steep staircase spiraling downward, swallowed by shadows. Despite the chill that ran down her spine, curiosity propelled her forward. She descended into the basement once more, this time through the secret entrance. The air was thick and musty, heavier than before. A faint glow emanated from the far end of the stone corridor. Something moved there. Evelyn's flashlight flickered as she approached, revealing a series of crude drawings etched into the walls. Twisted figures, children with hollow eyes, and spirals that seemed to writhe in the flickering light. At the corridor's end was a heavy iron door, rusted shut but for a small keyhole that seemed to shimmer faintly. Her pulse quickened as she reached into her coat pocket, pulling out the old iron key she'd found tangled in her grandmother's diary ribbon. It was the same key that had opened the music box, and now it felt like the final piece of a long-forgotten puzzle. With a deep breath, Evelyn slid the key into the lock. It turned with a grinding scrape, and the door creaked open to reveal a room cloaked in darkness. Inside, the faint sound of children's laughter echoed, haunting, hollow, and chilling. The pendant around her neck blazed with light as Evelyn stepped into the room, the shadows retreating to reveal the faces of the lost children. Pale, translucent, their eyes filled with sorrow. "We're waiting," a chorus of whispering voices said, barely audible. Evelyn knelt among them, her heart aching. "I'll free you," she promised, "but you must hold on just a little longer." Suddenly, the hollow man's shadow stretched into the room, his voice like grinding stone. "The spiral's curse cannot be undone without sacrifice. Are you prepared to pay the price?" Evelyn's resolve hardened. She had come too far to turn back. The battle for Hollow Pines was only beginning. Whispers from Hollow Pines. Part 8. The Price of Freedom. The hollow man's shadow coiled around the children's ghostly forms like a suffocating fog, dark and unyielding. Evelyn felt the cold bite of his presence, his ancient eyes boring into her soul, testing her resolve. The room seemed to shrink, the stone walls closing in as the weight of the curse pressed down like a crushing force. "I'm not afraid," Evelyn said, voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "I will break this curse." The hollow man's laughter echoed, a sound like dry leaves scraping against gravestones. Brave words. But bravery alone does not free the lost. He stepped forward, and with him, the room darkened further, shadows flickering like dying flames. The spiral pendant pulsed wildly, casting strange symbols on the walls, symbols Evelyn barely understood but felt deep within her bones. "You seek to undo what was sealed long ago," he said, voice low and relentless. "The spiral binds us all, lost souls and living alike. To break the chain, you must give something in return. A sacrifice." Evelyn swallowed hard, her thoughts racing back to her family, to her life outside this house. Could she give up everything to save these trapped souls? Could she lose herself in the process? The children's eyes shimmered with hope and fear, their whispers growing louder, pleading silently. Suddenly, the pendant flared bright, blinding her for a moment. When her vision cleared, the hollow man was gone, but the room was colder than ever. A new resolve settled within her. If the curse demanded a price, she would pay it, but on her terms. Evelyn knew that to truly break the spiral's hold, she had to confront the source, a dark secret buried deep within the history of Hollow Pines. She rose from her knees, clutching the pendant tightly. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the distant echo of a funeral bell. Her journey was no longer just about freeing the children, it was about uncovering the truth that had haunted this place for generations. And in that truth lay the key to salvation, or eternal darkness. Whispers from Hollow Pines. Part 9. The Diary's Revelation. Evelyn retreated from the basement's oppressive shadows, the weight of the hollow man's ultimatum echoing in her mind. She clutched the spiral pendant tightly, feeling its steady pulse, a heartbeat syncing with her own. Back in the study, the worn pages of her grandmother's diary beckoned. She sat by the flickering fireplace, the dim light casting trembling shadows on the walls. Turning the fragile pages, She searched for any clue that could help her face the darkness ahead. The diary's entries were filled with cryptic warnings and sorrowful memories. One passage, written in her grandmother's careful script, stood out. The curse was born from betrayal, a promise shattered in blood and silence. The spiral is not just a symbol but a map, a guide through the darkness to the source of the pain. Beneath the text, a crude drawing of the spiral intertwined with a map of the town and the forest around Hollow Pines. A red circle marked a spot deep in the woods, farther than Evelyn had ventured. Determined, she pulled on her coat and prepared to leave. The house's walls groaned as if protesting her departure, but Evelyn's resolve was unshakable. Outside, the chill of early morning wrapped around her. The forest loomed like a silent sentinel, the tangled branches whispering secrets she was only beginning to understand. Following the map, Evelyn trekked deeper into the woods. The spiral pendant guided her steps, glowing faintly whenever she strayed from the path. The forest grew darker and quieter, the air thick with anticipation. Suddenly, the trees opened onto a small clearing. In its center stood an ancient oak tree, gnarled and twisted with age. Its bark bore the unmistakable spiral carvings, worn but still visible. At the tree's base, half buried in roots, was a rusted iron box. Evelyn knelt, heart pounding as she pried it free. Inside the box, wrapped in yellowed cloth, lay a collection of old letters and a cracked photograph. The letters spoke of a broken vow, a tragic betrayal among the town's founders that had doomed the children's souls to eternal captivity. Reading the final letter, Evelyn's breath caught. To break the curse, one must face the past and offer forgiveness where it was denied. Only then can the spiral be unraveled, and the lost find peace. The weight of the task ahead pressed on her like the forest shadows. But Evelyn knew she had to try. The Hollow Man's presence was closer now, watching, waiting, and the spiral's secret was unraveling, thread by thread. Whispers from Hollow Pines. Part 11. After the silence. Dawn was breaking over Hollow Pines, casting soft golden light through the trees and gently washing away the shadows of the night. Evelyn remained kneeling in the clearing where the ancient oak stood, the ground beneath her still damp with the night's cold mist. The air felt lighter now, freed from the suffocating weight that had hung over the forest for generations. Her heart, once heavy with fear and sorrow, now beat with a cautious hope. The lost children's spirits had been freed, their whispers now a distant, joyous hum on the morning breeze. Yet, as the sky brightened, Evelyn realized her journey was far from over. The townspeople would need to know. The stories locked away in diaries, letters, and whispered secrets would have to be faced, shared, and understood if the scars of Hollow Pines were to truly heal. Evelyn rose slowly, brushing dirt from her knees. The pendant's glow had faded to a gentle warmth, resting now against her chest like a quiet promise. As she made her way back through the forest, the familiar sounds of waking birds and rustling leaves greeted her. The trees, once oppressive and dark, now seemed to lean gently toward her, their branches swaying as if in acknowledgement. When she reached the edge of the woods, the town of Hollow Pines was stirring to life. Smoke curled from chimneys, and faint voices echoed down empty streets. Evelyn's eyes scanned the horizon, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She knew the truth about the town's past, the betrayal, the broken promises, the curse, and how it had trapped innocent souls in darkness. It was now her mission to bring that truth into the light, to help the town confront its history so that the cycle would never repeat. As she walked toward her grandmother's old house, the wind carried a faint whisper, almost like a thank you, drifting on the breeze. Inside, Evelyn found the diary waiting, its pages still worn but now alive with meaning. She opened it to the final entry, her grandmother's handwriting flowing like a bridge between past and present. May those who listen find courage to forgive, and in forgiveness, find peace. The spiral turns no more. Evelyn smiled softly, the promise of a new beginning stirring within her. Outside, the first rays of sunlight touched the town, illuminating Hollow Pines in a warm embrace. And though the whispers from the forest had quieted, their story would live on, in every heart brave enough to listen. The morning light stretched long fingers across Hollow Pines, bathing the town in a soft, hopeful glow. But beneath the quiet streets and friendly faces, Evelyn sensed a tension, an unspoken weight that had yet to be lifted. The curse might have been broken, but the town's wounds ran deeper than shadows in the forest. Evelyn's footsteps echoed softly as she entered the small community center, where a handful of residents had gathered. They looked up, surprise flickering in their eyes as she stepped forward, clutching the worn diary and the rusted letters that had unlocked so much pain and so much truth. "I have something to share," she began, her voice steady but gentle. "It's about the past, about the children who were lost and the curse that held them." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Fear, disbelief, curiosity. Some crossed their arms, others leaned in, searching her face for signs of deceit or madness. But Evelyn held their gaze, unwavering. "This town's history has been buried in silence for too long. We need to face it, together." One by one, she recounted the story, the betrayals, the promises broken by those who had come before, and the toll it had taken on the innocent. She read aloud from the diary, the words carrying weight and sorrow, but also hope. A woman in the back wept quietly, a man clenched his jaw, anger and regret mixing in his eyes. Evelyn knew that healing would be difficult, that forgiveness would not come easily. But the first step was truth. After she finished, silence filled the room like a fragile bridge spanning generations of pain. Then, slowly, hands began to raise, not in accusation, but in tentative agreement. "We can't change what happened," an elder spoke, voice rough but resolute. "But maybe it's time we made things right." Evelyn nodded, a sense of purpose blooming within her. Together, they formed a plan to honor the lost children, to remember the past and ensure the spiral would never turn again. A memorial would be built at the edge of the forest, and stories once hidden would be shared openly. As the meeting dispersed, Evelyn stepped outside into the fresh air, the sun warming her face. The whispers from hollow pines were fading, replaced by the sound of voices coming together, ready to heal. The forest behind her stood still, but Evelyn knew it was watching, waiting to see if the town could finally break free from the shadows of its past. And this time, she believed it could. The days that followed felt like a slow unraveling of the town's long-held fears. Hollow Pines, once silent under the weight of its curse, now buzzed with quiet determination. Evelyn found herself at the heart of it, carrying the stories of the lost children and the truth of the past like a torch. She spent mornings in the library, helping gather records and testimonies, piecing together the fragments of history that had been scattered and hidden. Every discovery was a step toward healing. Names, faces, dates, memories once thought lost. Afternoons were spent with the townsfolk, many of whom approached her with stories they'd never dared to share. An old man spoke of his grandmother's whispered warnings. A young mother recounted strange dreams that seemed tied to the forest. A teacher showed her a faded photograph of children whose smiles seemed to flicker with something otherworldly. The memorial's design took shape slowly but deliberately. A spiral stone path winding through the edge of the forest, lined with trees planted to honor each lost soul. A circle of benches where people could gather and remember. At its center, a carved stone inscribed with a simple but powerful message: in memory, in forgiveness, in light. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Evelyn returned to the clearing near the ancient oak. The pendant lay warm against her chest, its light faint but steady. She knelt, placing a small bouquet of wildflowers beside the well, a silent tribute to those who had finally found peace. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves overhead, carrying a whisper so soft it was almost lost. "Thank you." Evelyn smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. The forest had changed, and so had the town, and herself. The journey had been painful, filled with darkness and fear, but it had led to something new: hope. As twilight deepened, Evelyn stood and looked back toward Hollow Pines. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it was a road she was ready to walk. The whispers from Hollow Pines were no longer voices of despair. They were a song of healing, and the promise of a future free from shadows. The morning after the memorial's unveiling, Hollow Pines seemed transformed. The heavy fog that often clung to the town had lifted, replaced by crisp, clear air that carried the scent of pine and earth. The spiral path shimmered faintly under the early sun, the stonework cool beneath Evelyn's fingertips as she traced the carvings that now told a story of healing instead of fear. Residents gathered quietly around the memorial, some holding hands, others lost in thought. Evelyn watched as old wounds seemed to ease just by being acknowledged, as generations of silence began to break. At the edge of the crowd, Mayor Harding approached her with a slow, sincere smile. "You did something here, Evelyn. Not just with the memorial, but with the town. We're beginning to feel alive again." Evelyn nodded, though a shadow of doubt lingered in her chest. "The curse is broken, but the memories remain. Healing takes time." The mayor placed a hand on her shoulder. "And we'll take that time. Together." As the day stretched on, a group of children ventured toward the forest's edge, their laughter bright and free, a sound unheard in Hollow Pines for decades. Evelyn's heart swelled watching them, a living testament to the change stirring through the town. That evening, beneath a sky scattered with stars, Evelyn returned once more to the ancient oak. The pendant around her neck pulsed gently, resonating with the forest's quiet energy. She whispered a promise to the night air, to guard the town, to honor its past, and to nurture its future. The wind rustled softly through the leaves, carrying with it a final whisper, a benediction. Peace. And for the first time in generations, Hollow Pines truly was at peace. The seasons turned, and Hollow Pines blossomed anew. The town's streets, once shadowed and silent, now hummed with quiet life. The memorial stood proudly at the forest's edge, a place of remembrance, healing, and hope. Evelyn became a guardian of those stories, sharing them with visitors who came seeking the truth behind the whispers. She organized gatherings beneath the ancient oak, where stories were told aloud, laughter mingled with tears, and the past was honored, not feared. Yet, even as peace settled over Hollow Pines, the forest held its secrets. On some nights, when the wind was just right, faint whispers could still be heard among the rustling leaves, a gentle reminder of lives once lost, and a warning to respect the delicate balance between light and shadow. One crisp autumn evening, as Evelyn sat by the fire with the pendant resting beside her, a sudden chill passed through the room. The flames flickered, casting elongated shadows that danced on the walls. Outside, the wind carried a familiar murmur, soft but insistent. She smiled, knowing the forest's whispers were not finished. The stories of Hollow Pines would live on, in the hearts of those who listened, and in the quiet rustle of the pines. The spiral turns once more, not as a curse, but as a circle of life, memory, and hope. And somewhere deep in the woods, the ancient oak stood tall, its roots entwined with the past and its branches reaching toward the future. The man cleared his throat. "Name's Daniel. I've lived here all my life. Heard you were back." Olivia's breath caught. This was the first sign of life she'd seen in hours. "How do you know me?" Daniel's gaze darkened. "The Harpers don't just come back without reason. Folks here remember. And they're talkin'. Olivia opened the door a little wider. "What do they say?" "About the hollow, about the disappearances, and about the curse." She swallowed hard. "What curse?" Daniel stepped onto the porch, lowering his voice. "Years ago, something happened in these woods. Folks vanished. No trace. Just silence. The town's been trapped in it ever since. They say the forest itself watches, waits. It's hungry." Olivia shivered despite herself. "I don't believe in curses." He gave a humorless laugh. "Doesn't matter what you believe. The hollow doesn't care." She looked past him into the night. The trees stood tall, their twisted branches like fingers clutching at the dark sky. Somewhere deep within, a faint, mournful sound drifted, the wind, or something else. Daniel leaned in closer. "If you're going to face this, you're going to need help. And you're going to need to be careful." Olivia nodded slowly, her resolve hardening. "I didn't come here to run from the past." He glanced toward the forest's edge. "Then you best get ready. The hollow's waiting." As Daniel retreated into the night, Olivia stood frozen on the porch. The silence around her felt thicker now, alive with unseen eyes and unspoken threats. And deep within the forest, something stirred. Olivia barely slept that night. The house, long abandoned, creaked and sighed with every gust of wind that rattled the windows. She lay awake, the journal heavy on her chest, her mind spinning with Daniel's warnings and the cryptic words from her mother's writing. Morning light finally seeped through the cracked curtains, casting pale shadows across the worn floorboards. Determined to learn more, Olivia dressed quickly and headed to the town's only cafe, a small, dimly lit place that smelled of burnt coffee and aged wood. Inside, a handful of locals nursed their drinks in silence. Conversations paused as she entered, eyes flicking toward her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Olivia approached the counter where a woman with graying hair and sharp eyes wiped down the surface. "Hi, I'm Olivia Harper," she said quietly. "I'm here to learn about Silent Hollow, about what happened here." The woman's eyes narrowed. "You're a Harper? Haven't seen one of you in years. I'm Ruth." Olivia nodded. "My family left after everything. But I got a letter. I think there's more I need to understand." Ruth's face softened a little. "You've come to the right place, though you might not like what you find. The town's been trapped under a shadow for a long time." Over the next hour, Ruth told Olivia fragments of the town's history. How people vanished without a trace, how the forest seemed to swallow them whole, and how a strange, unearthly silence always followed. She spoke of the old legends, of restless spirits, a song only the lost could hear, and a curse that no one dared speak of openly. Olivia scribbled notes, her mind racing. Everything connected: the letter, her mother's journal, Daniel's words. After leaving the cafe, she wandered toward the outskirts of town, drawn by an unexplainable pull toward the forest. As she reached the tree line, a chill settled over her. The trees were taller here, their twisted limbs like skeletal fingers reaching skyward. The air was thick, the silence oppressive. Then, faintly, she heard it, a low, haunting melody drifting through the trees. The Hollow's song. Frozen in place, Olivia listened as the notes curled around her, cold and sweet, a siren's call promising secrets and danger. She knew then she couldn't turn back. Olivia stood at the edge of the forest, the haunting melody weaving through the cold air like a thread pulling at her very soul. The song was unlike anything she'd ever heard, simultaneously beautiful and terrifying, filled with a sorrow so deep it threatened to drown her in its waves. Her breath caught in her throat as the first notes drifted closer, beckoning. She glanced back at the town, its quiet streets seemingly holding their breath, then forward into the dense woods where shadows moved like living things. The forest was alive. Taking a tentative step forward, Olivia's boots crunched on the blanket of dead leaves. The melody swelled, wrapping tighter around her senses, urging her onward. The trees grew taller, their branches tangled overhead, blotting out the gray sky and replacing it with a canopy of twisting limbs. She reached a small clearing bathed in pale moonlight, the source of the song just beyond. The air pulsed with energy, raw and ancient. Suddenly, the melody stopped. The silence that followed was worse. A voice whispered in the shadows, soft but sharp. "You shouldn't be here." Olivia spun around, flashlight trembling in her hand, but saw nothing but darkness. Her heart thundered as the voice came again, this time closer. "Leave before the Hollow takes you." She swallowed her fear and forced herself forward, stepping deeper into the forest. The ground beneath her feet grew damp, and a faint mist curled around the roots of the trees. As she pushed through the underbrush, something glimmered in the distance, a small, flickering light. Drawn to it, Olivia approached cautiously. There, half buried beneath moss and dirt, was a weathered lantern swinging gently in the breeze, though no one held it. Her fingers brushed the cold metal, and a sudden vision flashed in her mind. Faces, dozens of faces, pale, frightened, trapped behind invisible walls of shadow. She staggered back, heart racing. The lantern's flame flared brightly, casting eerie shapes on the trees. From the darkness, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked in black, its eyes glowing faintly like embers. "You seek answers," the figure said, voice like the rustle of dead leaves. "But some truths are prisons. Some questions are curses." Olivia met its gaze, steeling herself. I'm not afraid. The figure smiled, a slow, chilling curve of shadow and bone. Fear is the key, and you've already lost it. With that, it vanished into the night, leaving only the fading glow of the lantern and the echo of its warning. Olivia stood alone in the silent hollow, knowing now the danger she'd truly stepped into, and that the forest song was far from over. The chill from the cloaked figure's departure lingered in the air like a fog refusing to lift. Olivia's hands trembled as she tightened her grip around the lantern's handle. The flame flickered weakly, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to pulse with life. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee back to the safety of the town's empty streets, but the pull of Silent Hollow's mysteries held her rooted in place. The forest around her felt alive, breathing with an ancient rhythm that matched the pounding in her chest. Leaves rustled faintly overhead, whispering secrets she couldn't quite catch. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, a lonely, mournful cry that sent a shiver down her spine. Steeling herself, Olivia took a cautious step forward, lantern held high. The ground beneath her feet was soft, almost spongy, and the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled her nostrils. She scanned the shadows, searching for any sign of the figure or a path to follow. The trees began to thin, revealing the edge of a small pond, its surface still and glassy in the moonlight. Olivia approached, peering into the dark water. For a moment, she saw only her reflection, pale face framed by tangled hair and eyes wide with fear and determination. Then the water rippled, distorting her image. Shapes began to form beneath the surface. Faces, mouths open in silent screams, eyes pleading for release. Olivia stumbled back, her breath catching. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her mother's journal, flipping rapidly through the pages until she found the entry about the weeping pond. Her mother's handwriting was shaky but clear. The pond holds their souls, trapped between worlds. It cries for justice and vengeance. To save them, the curse must be broken at its source, deep within the hollow. Olivia's resolve hardened. She couldn't turn back now, not when so many were still trapped in the shadows, crying out for freedom. Suddenly, the water's surface erupted in a flurry of movement. A hand, pale and dripping, broke through the pond, grasping desperately at the air before sinking back into the depths. Olivia gasped and stepped back. The forest seemed to close in around her, and the haunting melody returned, rising like a chorus of lost voices. She glanced toward the trees, heart pounding, and caught sight of a faint glow, another lantern, swinging gently between two twisted branches. Without hesitation, she moved toward it, each step echoing louder in the oppressive silence. The hollow was alive, and it was watching. Olivia moved through the forest with renewed purpose, the flickering lantern guiding her way like a beacon in the darkness. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, felt amplified in the oppressive silence of the hollow. The melody that had haunted her since the pond began to swell and ebb like a tide, wrapping around her like a cold embrace. She clutched her mother's journal tightly, the pages worn and fragile under her fingers. Each entry seemed to pull her deeper into a world she hadn't known existed, a world where shadows held memories and the past bled into the present. The lantern ahead swung slowly, its light casting eerie shadows that danced along the twisted trunks of ancient trees. As Olivia neared, she realized it hung from a broken branch above a narrow path barely visible beneath a carpet of fallen leaves. Taking a deep breath, she stepped onto the path. The forest around her seemed to close tighter, the branches weaving into a natural archway that swallowed the moonlight. The air grew colder, heavier. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes tracking her every move. Suddenly, a low whisper drifted through the trees, a voice almost indistinguishable from the rustling leaves. "Turn back." Olivia's heart hammered, but she pressed on, the voice fading into the night as she followed the path deeper. Ahead, the ground sloped downward, revealing the entrance to a cavern hidden beneath the roots of a massive oak. A chill radiated from the dark maw, a cold so deep it seemed to seep into her bones. She hesitated at the threshold, the light from her lantern trembling in her grasp. Memories flooded her mind, her mother's warnings, Daniel's solemn eyes, the faces beneath the pond's surface. Summoning every ounce of courage, Olivia stepped inside. The cavern was vast, the walls slick with moisture, and the air thick with the scent of earth and decay. The only light came from her lantern, which cast long shadows that writhed like living things. Deeper inside, the faint sound of dripping water echoed, accompanied by a whispering chorus, the same melody, but distorted and haunting. Olivia moved forward, each step echoing against the stone. Suddenly, the ground beneath her shifted, and she stumbled into a shallow pit filled with tangled roots and scattered bones. A cold hand brushed her ankle, and she froze. The whispering grew louder, voices overlapping in a mournful song. Olivia's breath caught as a figure materialized from the shadows, a woman, translucent and shimmering, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Help us," the apparition pleaded. "Free us from the hollow's grip." Olivia nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. "I will. Tell me how." The ghost smiled faintly. "Seek the heart of the forest. Destroy the source. Only then will the silence end." With that, the figure vanished, leaving Olivia alone in the cold darkness. She stood, steadying her breath, and looked toward the cavern's depths. The journey was far from over. Olivia stood at the edge of the forest, the haunting melody weaving through the cold air like a thread pulling at her very soul. The song was unlike anything she'd ever heard, simultaneously beautiful and terrifying, filled with a sorrow so deep it threatened to drown her in its waves. Her breath caught in her throat as the first notes drifted closer, beckoning. She glanced back at the town, its quiet streets seemingly holding their breath, then forward into the dense woods where shadows moved like living things. The forest was alive. Taking a tentative step forward, Olivia's boots crunched on the blanket of dead leaves. The melody swelled, wrapping tighter around her senses, urging her onward. The trees grew taller, their branches tangled overhead, blotting out the gray sky and replacing it with a canopy of twisting limbs. She reached a small clearing bathed in pale moonlight, the source of the song just beyond. The air pulsed with energy, raw and ancient. Suddenly, the melody stopped. The silence that followed was worse. A voice whispered in the shadows, soft but sharp. "You shouldn't be here." Olivia spun around, flashlight trembling in her hand, but saw nothing but darkness. Her heart thundered as the voice came again, this time closer. "Leave before the hollow takes you." She swallowed her fear and forced herself forward, stepping deeper into the forest. The ground beneath her feet grew damp, and a faint mist curled around the roots of the trees. As she pushed through the underbrush, something glimmered in the distance, a small, flickering light. Drawn to it, Olivia approached cautiously. There, half buried beneath moss and dirt, was a weathered lantern swinging gently in the breeze, though no one held it. Her fingers brushed the cold metal, and a sudden vision flashed in her mind. Faces, dozens of faces, pale, frightened, trapped behind invisible walls of shadow. She staggered back, heart racing. The lantern's flame flared brightly, casting eerie shapes on the trees. From the darkness, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked in black, its eyes glowing faintly like embers. "You seek answers," the figure said, voice like the rustle of dead leaves. "But some truths are prisons. Some questions are curses." Olivia met its gaze, steeling herself. "I'm not afraid." The figure smiled, a slow, chilling curve of shadow and bone. "Fear is the key, and you've already lost it." With that, it vanished into the night, leaving only the fading glow of the lantern and the echo of its warning. Olivia stood alone in the silent hollow, knowing now the danger she'd truly stepped into, and that the forest song was far from over. The chill from the cloaked figure's departure lingered in the air like a fog refusing to lift. Olivia's hands trembled as she tightened her grip around the lantern's handle. The flame flickered weakly, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to pulse with life. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee back to the safety of the town's empty streets. But the pull of Silent Hollow's mysteries held her rooted in place. The forest around her felt alive, breathing with an ancient rhythm that matched the pounding in her chest. Leaves rustled faintly overhead, whispering secrets she couldn't quite catch. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, a lonely, mournful cry that sent a shiver down her spine. Steeling herself, Olivia took a cautious step forward, lantern held high. The ground beneath her feet was soft, almost spongy, and the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled her nostrils. She scanned the shadows, searching for any sign of the figure or a path to follow. The trees began to thin, revealing the edge of a small pond, its surface still and glassy in the moonlight. Olivia approached, peering into the dark water. For a moment, she saw only her reflection, pale face framed by tangled hair and eyes wide with fear and determination. Then the water rippled, distorting her image. Shapes began to form beneath the surface. Faces, mouths open in silent screams, eyes pleading for release. Olivia stumbled back, her breath catching. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her mother's journal, flipping rapidly through the pages until she found the entry about the weeping pond. Her mother's handwriting was shaky but clear. The pond holds their souls, trapped between worlds. It cries for justice and vengeance. To save them, the curse must be broken at its source, deep within the hollow. Olivia's resolve hardened. She couldn't turn back now, not when so many were still trapped in the shadows, crying out for freedom. Suddenly, the water's surface erupted in a flurry of movement. A hand, pale and dripping, broke through the pond, grasping desperately at the air before sinking back into the depths. Olivia gasped and stepped back. The forest seemed to close in around her, and the haunting melody returned, rising like a chorus of lost voices. She glanced toward the trees, heart pounding, and caught sight of a faint glow, another lantern, swinging gently between two twisted branches. Without hesitation, she moved toward it, each step echoing louder in the oppressive silence. The hollow was alive, and it was watching. Olivia moved through the forest with renewed purpose, the flickering lantern guiding her way like a beacon in the darkness. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, felt amplified in the oppressive silence of the hollow. The melody that had haunted her since the pond began to swell and ebb like a tide, wrapping around her like a cold embrace. She clutched her mother's journal tightly, the pages worn and fragile under her fingers. Each entry seemed to pull her deeper into a world she hadn't known existed, a world where shadows held memories, and the past bled into the present. The lantern ahead swung slowly, its light casting eerie shadows that danced along the twisted trunks of ancient trees. As Olivia neared, she realized it hung from a broken branch above a narrow path barely visible beneath a carpet of fallen leaves. Taking a deep breath, she stepped onto the path. The forest around her seemed to close tighter, the branches weaving into a natural archway that swallowed the moonlight. The air grew colder, heavier. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes tracking her every move. Suddenly, a low whisper drifted through the trees, a voice almost indistinguishable from the rustling leaves. "Turn back." Olivia's heart hammered, but she pressed on, the voice fading into the night as she followed the path deeper. Ahead, the ground sloped downward, revealing the entrance to a cavern hidden beneath the roots of a massive oak. A chill radiated from the dark maw, a cold so deep it seemed to seep into her bones. She hesitated at the threshold, the light from her lantern trembling in her grasp. Memories flooded her mind, her mother's warnings, Daniel's solemn eyes, the faces beneath the pond's surface. Summoning every ounce of courage, Olivia stepped inside. The cavern was vast, the walls slick with moisture, and the air thick with the scent of earth and decay. The only light came from her lantern, which cast long shadows that writhed like living things. Deeper inside, the faint sound of dripping water echoed, accompanied by a whispering chorus, the same melody, but distorted and haunting. Olivia moved forward, each step echoing against the stone. Suddenly, the ground beneath her shifted, and she stumbled into a shallow pit filled with tangled roots and scattered bones. A cold hand brushed her ankle, and she froze. The whispering grew louder, voices overlapping in a mournful song. Olivia's breath caught as a figure materialized from the shadows, a woman, translucent and shimmering, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Help us," the apparition pleaded. "Free us from the hollow's grip." Olivia nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. "I will. Tell me how." The ghost smiled faintly. "Seek the heart of the forest. Destroy the source. Only then will the silence end." With that, the figure vanished, leaving Olivia alone in the cold darkness. She stood, steadying her breath, and looked toward the cavern's depths. The journey was far from over. Olivia stood at the edge of the cavern's dark depths, her lantern casting trembling shadows against the damp stone walls. The ghost's words echoed in her mind. Seek the heart of the forest. Destroy the source. But what did that mean? How could she find something so elusive in this ancient wilderness? And what was the source of this curse that bound the lost souls here? She took a deep breath and stepped deeper into the cavern, each footfall muffled by the thick carpet of moss and tangled roots. The whispers that had filled the air now faded, replaced by a heavy silence that seemed to press against her chest. The air grew colder still, and droplets of water fell from the cavern ceiling, landing with soft plinks on the stone floor. Her flashlight beam pierced the darkness ahead, revealing a narrow tunnel carved into the rock. Olivia hesitated, but the pull of the unknown was stronger than her fear. She stepped inside. The tunnel twisted and turned, narrowing until she had to crouch to avoid scraping her head against the jagged ceiling. After what felt like hours, the passage opened into a vast chamber bathed in an eerie blue glow. In the center of the room stood an ancient tree, its roots gnarled and twisting, its branches stretching upward to a hole high in the cavern ceiling where faint moonlight filtered through. The tree pulsed with a strange energy, the source of the soft humming she could feel vibrating in her bones. Around its base lay dozens of small, cracked stone statues, figures frozen in agony, their faces twisted with fear and sorrow. Olivia approached cautiously, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. As she reached out to touch one of the statues, a sudden tremor shook the cavern. Dust and small stones rained down from the ceiling as a deep, rumbling growl filled the chamber. From the shadows behind the tree emerged the cloaked figure she had seen before, the same glowing eyes watching her with unyielding intensity. "You have come far," it said, voice like dry leaves scraping across stone. "But this is where the hollow defends its heart." Olivia swallowed her fear, standing tall. "I'm here to end this, to free the souls trapped in your darkness." The figure laughed, a sound like cracking ice. "You cannot destroy what you do not understand. The hollow is ancient. It feeds on fear, on silence, on forgotten pain. To defeat it, you must confront what you fear most, yourself." As the figure stepped forward, the chamber seemed to warp and twist, the statues' faces contorting into reflections of Olivia's own deepest fears: abandonment, loss, the echo of her mother's mysterious disappearance. Her breath caught as the room spun around her. She gripped the journal tighter, the words inside suddenly shining with a fierce light. Determined, Olivia whispered, "I'm not afraid." The chamber fell silent, the tree's glow pulsing brighter, as if waiting for her next move. The pulsing light from the ancient tree bathed the cavern in a surreal glow, casting shifting shadows that flickered like phantoms along the stone walls. Olivia's heartbeat thundered in her ears as she stood firm, eyes locked on the cloaked figure before her. The figure's glowing eyes bore into her soul, seeming to search for a crack in her resolve. "You say you're not afraid," the figure intoned, voice low and gravelly. "But fear is woven into the very fabric of this place. You cannot unbind it by mere will." Olivia swallowed hard, but her grip on the journal didn't falter. "Then teach me. Show me what I need to do." The figure's lips curled into something resembling a smile. "Very well. To break the curse, you must face your past, every hidden pain, every buried regret. Only then will the hollow release its grip." Suddenly, the cavern shifted. The ground beneath Olivia's feet grew soft, and a cold mist rose, swirling around her like living smoke. Images began to flicker in the mist, fleeting, fragmented memories that felt both distant and intimate. She saw herself as a child, laughing with her mother under the golden sun of a summer afternoon. Then the scene shifted, her mother's face, pale and strained, whispering warnings about the forest before vanishing into shadow. The sound of a struggle, a desperate plea, then silence. Tears stung Olivia's eyes as the memories churned. The pain she had buried for so long surfaced, the guilt, the questions, the loneliness. A voice echoed in the mist, soft and mournful. You cannot run from what haunts you. Olivia's breath hitched as the figure's voice spoke again, more clearly now. The hollow feeds on the unspoken. Face it. Accept it. Only then will you have the strength to end this. Taking a deep breath, Olivia closed her eyes. She allowed the memories to wash over her, confronting the grief and fear she'd carried alone for years. When she opened her eyes, the mist began to fade. The cavern was still, but the glow from the tree pulsed with renewed warmth. The cloaked figure nodded slowly. You have taken the first step, but the path ahead will test you further. There are those who will try to stop you, the darkness that thrives on despair. Olivia stepped forward, feeling the lantern's flame steady in her hand. I'm ready. From the shadows, distant whispers grew louder, voices rising in a haunting chorus that filled the cavern and echoed in her bones. A sudden, resolute motion, she plunged the lantern's flame into the orb. A brilliant explosion of light filled the clearing, shaking the ground beneath her feet. The orb shattered, releasing a wave of radiant energy that swept through the forest, dissolving shadows and lifting the heavy silence. The cloaked figure's form shimmered and faded, its voice a whisper carried on the wind. You have freed us, but the hollow's story is not yet finished. As the light dimmed, Olivia felt a profound peace settle over the forest. The air was alive with the songs of birds, the rustle of leaves, and the gentle murmur of the pond. She had broken the curse, but she knew that some shadows lingered, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. The forest around Olivia seemed to breathe anew. The heavy weight of silence that had once strangled the very air was replaced by a gentle rustling, the chorus of life returning to the clearing. Birds began to sing, their songs tentative but hopeful, and a soft breeze carried the scent of fresh pine and damp earth. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the hollow felt alive with possibility. Olivia sank to her knees beside the shattered remnants of the orb, exhaustion tugging at her limbs. The battle against the curse had taken everything she had, yet a quiet satisfaction settled in her heart. She had faced the darkness, confronted her deepest fears, and emerged stronger. But as the dawn light filtered through the branches, a faint unease gnawed at her mind. The cloaked figure's final words echoed still. The hollow's story is not yet finished. What had they meant? Was this truly the end, or merely the beginning of a new chapter? Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft crunch of footsteps approaching from the forest edge. Olivia looked up to see Daniel, his expression a mix of relief and concern. He had searched tirelessly, refusing to believe the hollow would claim her as it had so many others. "Olivia!" he called, his voice breaking with emotion as he hurried forward. "I thought I'd lost you." She smiled weakly, rising to her feet. "I'm here, Daniel. The hollow, it's broken." He pulled her into an embrace, the warmth of his arms a balm against the lingering chill in her bones. For a moment, the forest was silent but for their steady breaths and the distant song of birds. Together, they began the walk back toward the town, the first rays of sunlight guiding their path. Olivia knew that the hollow's curse was lifted, but healing would take time, not just for the forest, but for herself and the others who had been touched by its darkness. As they emerged from the woods, the townspeople gathered, their faces filled with hope and disbelief. Whispers of the curse's end spread quickly, and slowly, the community began to heal from years of fear and loss. But deep within the shadows of Silent Hollow, something stirred, a faint pulse of darkness, hidden beneath the roots of the ancient tree. The hollow was not truly gone. It waited, patient and eternal, for the next soul brave enough, or foolish enough, to step into its grasp. Olivia glanced back once more before turning away, the weight of her journey pressing on her shoulders. The forest was quiet now, but its secrets were far from fully told. And in the stillness, the hollow whispered its promise: this is not the end. The forest had grown restless, its ancient roots awakening from a long slumber. Olivia and Daniel stood before the pulsating young tree, feeling the creeping darkness wrap around them like a suffocating fog. The hollow's curse was no longer confined, it had spread, feeding on the fears and memories buried deep beneath the earth. Olivia tightened her grip on the talisman, the intricate carvings glowing faintly as if responding to her resolve. Daniel's eyes flickered with equal parts fear and determination. They knew what they faced was beyond anything they had encountered before, a living shadow that sought to consume the very soul of the forest and the town beyond. Together, they began to chant the ancient incantations from the journal Olivia had found, words passed down through generations, meant to bind the darkness and heal the land. The air thickened, charged with raw energy as the roots writhed violently, pulling at their feet as if the forest itself resisted their efforts. Light burst forth from the talisman, cutting through the darkness like a blade. The shadows screamed, twisting and shrinking as the curse fought to survive. Olivia's voice grew stronger, unwavering, even as exhaustion threatened to consume her. With one final cry, the roots recoiled, the dark forms shattered like glass, and the young tree's sinister glow faded into a soft, golden light. The forest exhaled, the heavy silence lifted, replaced by a gentle breeze that carried the scent of renewal. Olivia and Daniel collapsed to the ground, breathless but victorious. The hollow was broken, not just stilled, but truly healed. The forest's secrets were laid bare, its curse lifted at last. As dawn's first light spilled over Silent Hollow, the town awoke from its long nightmare. Children laughed, birds sang, and the ancient trees stood tall and free. Yet Olivia knew some stories never truly end. The hollow's whispers had faded, but its memory remained, a reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath, waiting only for the light to fade again. For now, though, peace reigned, and in the heart of the forest, life began anew. Title: The House on Raven's Ridge. Part 1: The Arrival. The small town of Greyhaven had always been a place where the past lingered like a stubborn fog, soft at times, thick and suffocating at others. Tucked away in the shadow of Raven's Ridge, it was a place of cracked sidewalks, weathered porches, and whispers that never quite left the air. When Claire Mason's car crested the last hill, and the silhouette of the old Victorian house came into view, her breath caught in her throat. The house stood alone, atop the ridge like a sentinel watching over the town. Its darkened windows seemed to watch, hollow and unblinking, as if the house itself was alive and waiting. Claire had inherited the place from her late aunt, a woman she barely remembered, but whose sudden passing left her the sole owner of the house and the secrets it held. The letter that came with the deed was cryptic, a single line scrawled in fading ink. "Find the truth before it finds you." The townspeople had warned her. Greyhaven had stories that chilled the bones. The house was said to be cursed, haunted by the restless souls of those who had vanished there. But Claire was a woman of reason, a reporter by trade, and she was determined to uncover the truth for herself. As she pulled up the gravel driveway, the wind picked up, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and something else, something metallic, sharp, and cold. She stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching beneath her boots, and stared up at the house. The front door creaked open before she could reach it. "Welcome home," a voice whispered, and the shadows seemed to pulse. Claire's heart hammered in her chest as she crossed the threshold into darkness. Claire's eyes adjusted slowly to the dim interior of the house. Dust motes floated in the shafts of late afternoon sunlight filtering through the grimy windows. The air was thick with the scent of aged wood, faded wallpaper, and something else, an undercurrent of dampness and decay that seemed to cling to every surface. The door, which had swung open seemingly on its own, now hung still and silent behind her. She took a cautious step forward, her footsteps echoing across the creaking floorboards. The house was larger than she'd expected, rooms opening off one another like a maze. The wallpaper was peeling, revealing faded floral patterns beneath, and the ornate woodwork was dulled with age. As Claire moved deeper inside, the soft sound of something scratching echoed faintly from the walls, like nails tapping or claws scraping. She paused, her breath caught. "Hello," she called softly, but the only answer was silence. She pulled the letter from her coat pocket again, staring at the cryptic message. "Find the truth before it finds you." What truth? And who, or what, was she supposed to find it before? Exploring the main floor, Claire found remnants of a life long gone. Old photographs yellowed with age, a dusty piano missing several keys, a shattered mirror leaning against the wall. One photograph caught her eye, a black and white image of a young girl standing on the porch of the very house, her face obscured by shadows. On the back was scribbled a single word, Evelyn. Her fingers trembled as she traced the name. Was Evelyn the key? The house's history seemed tangled with secrets waiting to unravel. A sudden chill brushed past her neck, and she spun around. The hallway behind her was empty, yet the scratching sound returned, louder, closer, coming from behind the far wall. With heart pounding, Claire pressed her palm to the wall. The wood felt cold, unnaturally so. She pulled back and stepped toward the staircase, the sound of scratching fading into silence as she ascended. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched before her, lined with closed doors. At the far end, a faint light flickered beneath one of the doors, a soft glow like candlelight. Summoning her courage, Claire approached and gently pushed the door open. Inside was a small room, untouched by time. A desk stood against the wall, scattered with papers, an open journal resting atop them. The candle flickered on the desk, though no flame was visible. Claire picked up the journal, flipping through the fragile pages. The handwriting was neat but hurried, filled with entries about strange noises, disappearances, and a growing dread that something was watching from the shadows. One passage stood out. The house breathes at night, and with it come the voices. They whisper my name and speak of things I dare not understand. I fear the darkness is alive, and soon it will claim us all. A sudden slam echoed from downstairs, shaking the house. Claire's heart leapt. She wasn't alone. Claire's breath hitched as the sound reverberated through the old house, a heavy thud that seemed to shake the very foundation beneath her feet. The candle flickered violently, casting shifting shadows that danced along the faded wallpaper. She clutched the journal tighter, heart pounding, and forced herself to move. The silence was thick and heavy as she descended the stairs, every creak amplifying her nerves. At the bottom, the hallway stretched out, empty and silent once again, but the unmistakable feeling of being watched crawled up her spine. Her eyes darted toward the living room, the source of the noise. The room was a ruin of old furniture draped in dust-covered sheets, but something had been disturbed. The heavy armchair lay toppled on its side, as if someone, or something, had lurched against it. She knelt beside it, running a hand over the fabric. Her fingers brushed something cold and smooth, a small, intricately carved wooden box. It was heavy in her hand, the surface etched with strange symbols she didn't recognize. As she lifted the box, a soft humming filled the air. Low, vibrating, almost musical. Goosebumps rose along her arms as the box vibrated faintly, pulsing in her hands. A sudden chill swept through the room, and the humming deepened, seeming to resonate with something beyond her understanding. The box felt alive, as if it held a heartbeat of its own. Claire looked around, searching for answers, when her gaze landed on the fireplace. Above it hung a portrait of a stern-looking woman with piercing eyes that seemed to follow her every move. She hesitated, then carefully opened the box. Inside lay a bundle of faded letters tied with a black ribbon and a small silver key, cold and heavy as if forged from midnight itself. The letters were brittle but legible, written in the same neat script as the journal upstairs. They told the story of a woman named Evelyn, her struggles with a dark presence in the house, desperate attempts to protect her family, and finally, a warning. The darkness feeds on fear and silence. Speak the truth, or be consumed by lies. As Claire read, the humming faded, replaced by a low whispering that filled the room. Words she couldn't quite make out but felt deep within her bones. A sudden crash upstairs made her jump. The house groaned, as if awakening from a long sleep, and Claire realized the fight for the house's soul was only just beginning. The air grew thick as Claire and Mr. Hawthorne hurried through the shadowed hallways of his home. The ancient clock on the wall ticked unevenly, its sound swallowed by an unnatural silence that seemed to press in from all sides. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows like the voice of the house itself. "We don't have much time," Mr. Hawthorne said, his voice urgent but steady. "The watcher senses the box, and with it, your presence here. It will try to claim you before midnight." Claire's hands tightened around the box, her knuckles whitening. What happens if it succeeds? The old man's eyes darkened. You become part of the house's story, a lost soul trapped in the silence, just like Evelyn and others before her. They reached a heavy wooden door near the back of the house. Mr. Hawthorne produced a tarnished key and unlocked it, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "This is the old cellar," he explained. "A place where the land's old power is strongest. We'll need to use it to confront the Watcher." Claire followed him down the steps, the air growing colder and more oppressive with each footfall. The flickering glow of a lantern revealed walls covered in ancient symbols, carved into the stone centuries ago by hands long gone. In the center of the cellar stood a large stone altar, draped with tattered cloth and surrounded by candles that had long since burned down to stubs. Mr. Hawthorne moved to the altar and began arranging the contents of the wooden box, an assortment of strange artifacts, small bones, and a silver dagger with an intricately carved handle. "This ritual will bind the Watcher, but it requires a sacrifice," he said grimly. Claire's heart leapt into her throat. "What kind of sacrifice?" The old man looked at her with somber eyes. "The ritual demands a part of your soul, a memory, a secret so deeply held that offering it will weaken the Watcher's grip." Claire's mind raced, but one thought stood out above the rest: the guilt she had carried for years, the secret she had buried deep inside. As Mr. Hawthorne began chanting in a language ancient and guttural, Claire placed the locket on the altar and closed her eyes, willing herself to release her pain. The candles flared to life, casting wild shadows that danced and writhed on the cellar walls. The air hummed with power, and the temperature plunged further. A chilling voice, neither male nor female, whispered through the darkness. "Why do you resist?" Claire opened her eyes to see a shadow forming in the corner, a mass of darkness with two glowing, empty eyes. The Watcher. It moved closer, tendrils of cold smoke swirling around its form, reaching for her. Claire stood firm, the memory she offered burning bright in her mind, the moment she chose to forgive herself. The shadow recoiled, hissing like a wounded beast. With a final cry, Mr. Hawthorne plunged the dagger into the altar. A shockwave of light burst forth, filling the cellar and tearing at the darkness. When the light faded, the Watcher was gone, but the house was silent now in a way that felt unnatural. Claire looked at Mr. Hawthorne, breathless. "It's over," he said quietly. But deep in her heart, Claire knew this was only the beginning. The dawn crept slowly over Raven's Ridge, painting the sky with pale shades of pink and gold. Claire sat on the porch of Mr. Hawthorne's house, the weight of last night's ordeal pressing heavily on her chest. The oppressive darkness that had haunted the house seemed to have lifted, but the quiet that now surrounded her was uneasy, almost unnatural. Mr. Hawthorne joined her, his weathered face shadowed by a thin layer of worry. "The ritual weakened the Watcher," he said, "but it did not destroy it." Claire's fingers traced the edge of the silver dagger, still warm from the ritual. "Why? If it feeds on secrets and silence, why did releasing my truth not end it?" The old man sighed. "Because the house is a reflection of many souls trapped across generations. Each secret, each fear adds to its strength. Your sacrifice was powerful, but others remain." Claire's mind flashed back to Evelyn's journal, the whispered warnings, the desperate hope for freedom. "So the house, it's a prison." "Exactly," Mr. Hawthorne said grimly. "And breaking its hold requires more than one act of courage. It needs a chain of truths, each one breaking a link of silence." Claire felt a cold gust brush past her. From the ridge behind the house, the trees swayed as if alive, whispering secrets of their own. Determined, Claire stood and looked toward the horizon. She had survived the Watcher's grasp for now, but the fight was far from over. Evelyn's story, the box, the house, they were all pieces of a puzzle she was still struggling to understand. "Where do we begin?" she asked. Mr. Hawthorne pulled a small, cracked map from his coat. It showed the land around the house, marked with strange symbols and points of interest. "There are other places tied to this curse," he explained. "Old family homes, abandoned towns, places where silence still rules. We must visit them all if we hope to break the cycle." Claire nodded. The path ahead was daunting, but she felt the first flicker of hope in weeks. Together, they would face the shadows lurking beyond Raven's Ridge, and uncover the truth that could finally set the lost souls free. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the ridge. The journey was just beginning. The sun had climbed fully into the sky, casting sharp light over the dense forest surrounding Raven's Ridge. Claire and Mr. Hawthorne packed their gear carefully, the weight of the past days heavy in their movements but their purpose unwavering. The map lay unfolded between them on the wooden table, a guide to the haunted corners scattered throughout the region, places where the Watcher's influence lingered, waiting for a crack in the defenses to slip through. "This first stop is the old Whitmore estate," Mr. Hawthorne explained, tracing a finger along the faded lines of the map. "Abandoned for decades, but it was once a place of great tragedy. Another link in the chain." Claire studied the map, her fingers brushing over the mark. "Do we know what to expect?" "Pain, loss, and secrets," the old man said. "And possibly echoes of the Watcher's power. It feeds off suffering, you see. Our hope lies in uncovering the buried truths and setting those souls free." The journey to the estate was long and silent, the forest thickening around their path until the distant silhouette of a grand but crumbling mansion emerged through the trees. Ivy strangled the walls, and shattered windows stared like empty eyes. Claire's heart pounded as they crossed the threshold into the house's hollow shell. The air was stale, thick with dust and decay. Every creak of the floorboards beneath their feet echoed like a whisper from the past. In the main hall, faded portraits hung crooked on the walls, faces frozen in sorrow, eyes that seemed to watch them with desperate pleading. The scent of old wood and forgotten memories filled the space. Claire pulled out Evelyn's journal once more, flipping to a page where a hastily drawn sketch showed the Whitmore estate surrounded by strange markings. "We need to find where the family kept their secrets," she murmured, voice steady despite the creeping chill that snaked down her spine. Mr. Hawthorne nodded and led the way to the library, a vast room lined with ancient books and papers strewn across the floor. Among the scattered documents, Claire spotted a weathered diary, its leather cover cracked and brittle. As she opened it, the voice of the past seeped into the present. The diary belonged to Margaret Whitmore, the last matriarch of the estate, who chronicled the gradual unraveling of her family, the strange occurrences, and the growing shadow that consumed their home. Claire read aloud passages that spoke of strange noises at night, whispered voices in empty rooms, and a relentless feeling of being watched. The final entries were frantic, warning of a darkness that was no longer content to lurk in silence. Suddenly, the temperature dropped sharply. The shadows in the corners of the room deepened, twisting and shifting with unnatural movement. A cold, spectral hand brushed against Claire's arm. She gasped, turning to see a faint figure, a woman in tattered clothes, eyes filled with sorrow and fear. The apparition reached out, lips moving in a silent plea. "The truth," the ghost whispered, voice barely audible. "Free us." Claire nodded, heart aching. "We will. We have to." The house seemed to groan, as if acknowledging their presence, both welcoming and warning. The Watcher's shadow lingered here, but so did hope, fragile, flickering, yet unyielding. Together, Claire and Mr. Hawthorne prepared to delve deeper into the estate's secrets, knowing that every revelation would bring them closer to ending the curse, or to becoming part of its endless darkness. The air in the Whitmore estate grew colder as Claire and Mr. Hawthorne ventured deeper into the mansion's bowels. The creaking floorboards and the distant dripping of water echoed like whispers from a forgotten time, each sound stirring unease within Claire's chest. The faint light from their lanterns flickered, casting elongated shadows that seemed to dance and shift unnaturally on the peeling wallpaper and cracked walls. The diary of Margaret Whitmore had offered them a glimpse into the torment that plagued the family, but the real secrets were hidden in the estate's basement, a place long sealed and avoided even by the locals. Mr. Hawthorne hesitated before descending the creaky stairs, gripping the rusted iron railing tightly. "This is where the family's darkest memories lie," he murmured, voice barely audible. Claire swallowed hard and followed him down into the darkness. The basement smelled of damp earth and rot, thick with the scent of decay and forgotten despair. The beam of their lanterns revealed a large stone chamber, its walls carved with symbols eerily similar to those in the cellar of Mr. Hawthorne's home. In the center stood a heavy iron chest, covered in dust and rust. The air around it seemed charged, a palpable tension humming beneath their skin. Claire approached slowly, her breath shallow. "This must be it." Mr. Hawthorne nodded, retrieving a small set of ancient keys from his coat. The largest key fit into the chest's lock with a reluctant click, and with a groan, the lid creaked open. Inside lay a collection of letters, photographs, and a small wooden box similar to the one Claire had found in the forest. The box was ornately carved, its surface worn by time, yet strangely compelling. Claire reached for it, but the moment her fingers brushed the wood, the temperature plummeted and the shadows in the corners thickened. A sudden, low growl resonated from the darkness, and the air seemed to ripple as the watcher's presence surged once more. "Hold onto each other," Mr. Hawthorne shouted, pulling Claire back as tendrils of black mist coiled around their feet. The box pulsed with a faint glow, as if responding to the threat. Claire gripped it tightly, focusing on the memory she had offered before, the truth she had bled into the ritual. She felt a warmth spreading from the box, pushing back the darkness inch by inch. The watcher hissed, its form flickering, but the light grew stronger, forcing it back into the shadows. As the tendrils retreated, the chamber fell silent once again. Claire exhaled, heart pounding, her fingers still clutching the box. "We're close," she said, voice steady despite the lingering fear. Mr. Hawthorne nodded, eyes shadowed but resolute. "Each piece we find breaks the curse a little more, but it's also clear the watcher grows desperate." Claire looked at the letters and photographs, the lives behind them filled with pain and secrets. "We have to keep going." The night outside pressed against the mansion's walls, and somewhere deep in the distance, the watcher waited, patient, hungry, and relentless. The thick shadows of the Whitmore estate's basement seemed to pulse with a living darkness as Claire and Mr. Hawthorne gathered their discoveries. The carved wooden box, letters, and photographs were carefully packed, their fragile contents heavy with the weight of the past. Yet the air still carried the eerie whisper of something unfinished, a promise of more secrets lurking beyond the veil. As they ascended the stairs back into the fading daylight, Claire felt the oppressive silence wrap around them like a shroud. The house seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Outside, the forest stood silent, the wind absent even among the swaying branches. The stillness was unsettling, a stark contrast to the storm of memories and shadows inside the mansion. "We need to visit the next location on the map," Mr. Hawthorne said quietly. "The Marrow Woods. It's where the land itself was said to be cursed long before the house was built." Claire studied the map again, tracing the path. The Marrow Woods lay several miles south, a place shunned by locals, wrapped in legend and fear. "We don't have much time," she replied. "The watcher's hold is spreading." The journey to the woods was tense. Every step forward seemed to pull the darkness tighter around Claire's mind, whispers crawling just at the edge of hearing. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the wooden box. It pulsed with warmth and yet seemed to hum with an ancient energy she couldn't yet understand. The trees of Marrow Woods loomed tall and thick, their twisted branches knotted like the gnarled fingers of some ancient being. The ground was soft with moss and decayed leaves, muffling their footsteps. As they moved deeper, Claire noticed a faint glow between the trees, faint blue lights hovering just out of reach, flickering like will-o'-the-wisps. "It's said these lights lead travelers astray," Mr. Hawthorne warned, voice low. "Many who follow them never return." Claire's heart quickened, but she pressed on, drawn by the sense that the woods held another piece of the puzzle, another truth buried beneath layers of fear. They came upon a clearing where the earth was scorched black. The trees twisted grotesquely, as if recoiling from some unseen force. In the center stood an ancient stone altar, covered with strange symbols that matched those in the basement. Claire set the wooden box down carefully on the altar. The moment it touched the stone, the blue light surged brighter, swirling like ethereal flames. The air thickened, and a voice whispered in her mind, a chorus of voices pleading for release, their words tangled in sorrow and rage. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and roots burst from the soil, twisting and writhing like serpents. The watcher's shadow rose again, more tangible and furious. Claire and Mr. Hawthorne stood their ground, holding onto the box as the ritual they had begun at the estate pulsed through the forest. Light fought darkness, truth battled silence. The struggle was fierce, the air crackling with energy, but slowly the roots retracted, the shadows dissolved, and the voices faded into a mournful hush. Breathless, Claire looked at Mr. Hawthorne. "It's weakening. For now," he cautioned. "But the curse is tied to the land itself. We must keep moving, keep uncovering." As they left the clearing, the woods seemed to sigh, the weight of centuries easing just a little. Claire glanced back one last time. The blue lights had vanished, but she knew they would return, as would the watcher, until every secret was laid bare. The sun was dipping low behind the dense treeline as Claire and Mr. Hawthorne made their way from the Marrow Woods toward the next location marked on the map, the abandoned village of Hollow Creek. The village had long been swallowed by time, its buildings left to crumble and fade into the earth. Local legends spoke of the disappearance of its inhabitants, swallowed whole by the darkness that gnawed at the edges of the land. The air grew colder with each step, shadows stretching longer as they approached the forgotten village. Claire's grip tightened on the wooden box, feeling its steady warmth against the chill that seeped through the fading light. Hollow Creek was a ghost town in every sense. Empty houses with broken windows, rusted tools scattered like forgotten bones, and the faintest trace of smoke rising from a long-dead hearth. The silence was suffocating. They paused at what had once been the village square, where a well stood dry and cracked. The stones around it were etched with symbols, ancient and worn. Claire knelt beside the well, brushing dirt from the carvings. "These markings, they're a warning," she murmured. "The same language as the altar in the woods." Mr. Hawthorne nodded, lighting a lantern. "It's a language of binding, used to trap and contain. The villagers must have tried to hold something back." The evening shadows deepened as they explored further, uncovering signs of a desperate fight. Scorch marks on the walls, hastily barricaded doors, and cryptic messages scratched into the wood. Suddenly, a faint sound echoed through the empty streets, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like the slow beating of a heart. Claire's breath caught. "Do you hear that?" The tapping grew louder, more insistent, drawing them toward the old church at the edge of the village. The wooden doors hung crooked on their hinges, creaking in the cold wind. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of damp stone. Pews lay broken and overturned, and the altar was bare except for a single candle flickering weakly. But it wasn't the candle that caught Claire's attention. On the floor beneath it lay a faded tapestry, its edges torn and frayed. The tapestry depicted a figure cloaked in shadow, eyes glowing with an unholy light, unmistakably the Watcher. A sudden chill swept through the room as the tapping became a low, echoing heartbeat, not outside, but from within the walls themselves. Claire pressed her hand against the cold stone, feeling a vibration beneath her fingertips. "The Watcher's prison," Mr. Hawthorne whispered. "They tried to trap it here." The heartbeat grew faster, the air thickening with tension. Shadows began to twist and writhe along the cracked walls, as if the darkness itself was alive and breathing. Claire and Mr. Hawthorne exchanged a grim look. The Watcher was near, testing its bonds, desperate to break free. "We need to reinforce the bindings," Claire said, pulling out the wooden box. "Before it's too late." Together, they began to trace the ancient symbols, chanting the words inscribed in the diary, pouring all their will into the fragile ritual. Outside, the wind howled through the skeletal trees, carrying with it the mournful cries of Hollow Creek's lost souls. Inside, the shadows recoiled, for now. But Claire knew this was only a moment's reprieve. The Watcher's hunger was endless, and the night was far from over. The first light of dawn barely pierced the dense fog hanging over Hollow Creek as Claire and Mr. Hawthorne prepared to leave the forsaken village behind. Their bodies ached from the night's strain, but their minds were restless, haunted by the palpable presence of the Watcher, which seemed to grow stronger despite their efforts.